Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. I'm the King Live, and today we're going to be breaking down all of the things that you need to know to win more rounds on defense in Valorant. Knowing how to play defense effectively is easily one of the best ways to turn games in your favor in Valorant. Most teams in matchmaking struggle to work together effectively on offense, so that's why in this guide we're going to be teaching you how to take advantage of this lack of communication to help you win more games. Before we get into it though, let's introduce our question of the day, which is, do you prefer to defend or attack first in Valorant? For me personally, I prefer to defend first because I feel like it sets the tone for the game going forward. Defending generally feels easier, so when you're able to pick up the first couple of rounds on defense and get the momentum rolling early, it just feels a lot better than trying to get things started on offense first. But I've also heard players say that they prefer to start on offense, so be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Moving on to our very first thing that you should start doing to win more rounds on defense though, you likely need to be playing more proactively on defense than you currently are. One of the biggest problems in solo queue is that defenses are way too easy to read. So many times when playing on defense, it seems like your teammates are just allergic to making plays together. The entire time on offense, you're focusing on executing strats together and trading each other, but then on defense, everyone goes and watches their angle alone rather than doing strats that they can play off of each other better. I'm not saying that every single round you should be running at the enemies, but if you give the attackers too much territory willingly, they're likely just going to plow through you. Specifically, one of the easiest things you can fight for is ultimate orbs. There's no reason you should be giving the attackers the ultimate orbs every single round for free. Try to make them fight for these ult orbs some rounds. Make them use their utility early to retake these areas. You don't need to stack up 5 players to do this either. Simply taking 2 players from your team and using their utility to deny the enemy team territory can often be enough to win rounds alone, because especially at lower ranks, this sort of play is very unexpected. The truth is, it's incredibly common for defenses to play proactively in pro play because that's how the entire game is meant to be played. However, in matchmaking, it's harder to communicate with your teammates and set up these sorts of tactics or baits, and this is the biggest thing that sets apart good players from great players. There are too many players in this game that are great solo players but terrible team players. Learn how to play with your teammates and learn how to set up baits with them and play aggressively for territory when you feel it's appropriate, and I promise you it will win you more rounds. And before we move on, if you are serious about improving, I highly recommend that you head on over to skillcapped.com and check out our hyper improvement system. We have up-to-date lineups, courses on how to climb with all agents, Smurf commentaries where a higher ranked player walks you through how to carry in your rank, and so much more. Come join over 500,000 satisfied members, improve that KDA, and get the rank that you've always wanted at skillcapped.com. Link in the description below. Moving on to our next tip though, and this is a really big one that most people don't talk about much. When you queue into a match, it's important that you're aware of what utility the enemy team has as well as what utility they don't have. Specifically what I'm referring to is, do they have smokes, flashes, mobility, recon, flank guards? All of these things are going to dictate what you are capable of and what you're not capable of throughout those rounds. For example, if they don't have flashes, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to play closer angles, especially with weapons like shotguns, because you'll never have to worry about the enemies pop flashing out of the smoke. At the very most, what you'll encounter is the enemies reconning through the smoke or dashing out of it as jet. But aside from that, they have to dry push through those smokes because they literally do not have any flashes. You can take advantage of this and play different off angles that potentially would have been very dangerous before. Same thing goes for if they don't have any recon abilities. Basically, if they don't have recon, pretty much all corners of the map are fair game. The reason there are so many corners and 50-50s in Valorant is because there is a number of recon abilities that are intended to be used to clear them out. However, if their team is drafted poorly, it is not your fault. Take advantage of their lack of recon and just set up as many obnoxious baits as you can with your teammates. Have one player on site playing like normal and then have a buddy sitting in the corner waiting for them to execute onto site. You should be able to punish the enemy team for bad drafts like this, and the only way to do that is by making yourself aware what their team comp is capable of and not capable of at the beginning of the game. Moving on to the biggest thing I notice with higher tier players in their matchmaking games on defense, if you want to win more rounds, you obviously need to have more of an impact in those rounds. And what's the easiest way to do that? Well, generally it's going to mean you have to be rotating a little bit faster in your matchmaking games. Now, I understand fakes, rotates, and lurks from the offense are all things that happen in these games, However, in matchmaking, they are going to be a lot less common, and it's going to be a lot more effective if you are there as the enemy team is coming in, rather than if you're on the other side of the map, anchoring down the other site on the off chance that they decide to rotate. Now, on the off chance that the enemy team has proven that they like to lurk or rotate a lot, you'll have to start being a little bit more careful about it. But until they do that, it's most important that you are at the fights when they are happening. This is not to say that nobody on your team should anchor site, but it's more in the perspective of if you believe you are the strongest player on your team, you should probably not be the one anchoring down the site unless you're playing a character that is meant to do that, such as Killjoy or Cypher. The best way that you can play a good flex role for your team is by playing more of a central position on the map, and if you don't see any action there at the beginning of the round, rotating to help the players who are being pushed. The higher rank you get, the more you will likely get punished for rotating quickly, but specifically in lower ranks, players will most of the time full commit to whatever the first site they are at is. To win more games, you need to have more of an impact in those games, and it's really hard to have an impact when you're holding down an angle that nobody is going to push. Instead, do yourself a favor and always try to move towards where the action is happening on the map. This is why in your games, I highly recommend that you try to avoid being one of the players on site if you can. You want to be in a position where you can rotate and help your team as much as possible, and if you're the designated player for that site, you can't do it nearly as easily. Switching gears though, let's talk about something that is incredibly risky to do on defense in Valorant, and that is peeking long angles. Valorant is a game of strategy, and although at times you can get away with just straight up outgunning players, it's not always the best idea, especially if they have as good or better aim than you. If you're just challenging enemies at every single angle, then there's not going to be much strategy involved, you're just looking for gunfights. Which on one end, if you're winning the gunfights, that's great, and maybe you should keep doing it. However, if you're not winning the gunfights, you're working harder, not smarter. Instead, rather than peeking every single angle on the map, what you're going to want to do is play for info and then only engage the enemies when you have a teammate who is there to help you. If you fight an enemy in B main at the start of every round, there is no crossfire that can be created here. However, if you wait to engage them until after they push out of B tunnels, I'll have a teammate from heaven who can help me with this fight now. You can take these aim duels sometimes, but if you're doing it every round and getting punished for it, you're likely going to start losing rounds for your team. And if you're getting picked off 5 seconds into the round because you peeked C long, your team is at a massive disadvantage, and it's all because you got greedy and were looking for a gunfight. There's 100 seconds in every single round. There's no shame in slowing it down a bit and taking your time. If you're getting hard pushed on a site, you can fall back and wait for your team, and that is going to be a lot better than just full swinging out and dying. Moving on to our last tip though, which is actually going to contradict our last one slightly. If you're going to peek a long angle early, do it with an operator. The operator is so incredibly strong in solo queue because it takes a decent amount of communication and safety to play against one, and those are two things that just do not exist in matchmaking. People dry peek op angles early into the rounds, and they don't use their utility to grab territory, and they very rarely will effectively trade each other. The operator, although expensive, can single-handedly sway the entire direction of a game, and that's why if your team does not have a player who uses the operator, I recommend that you try to pick up that role for your team. We mentioned earlier how the operator is strong versus teams if they don't have smokes, but that's not the only time that it's good. You don't need to be playing Jet to use the op, and I'll be the first to say I don't love opping. However, you can't deny how strong the gun is. We've all been in the games where a player on the enemy team has 2 kills and then they pick up an operator and are suddenly top fragging. The operator is made to punish players for fast play, and that's exactly what matchmaking is. Fast play. Do yourself a favor, and if your team is struggling to win rounds, try to pick up an operator next chance that you get and see if it helps anything. Lastly, remember, if you want to improve, win more gunfights, and get the rank that you've always wanted, then be sure to check out SkillCapped.com. Link in the description below. Most of these tips come from a mixture of watching pro matches and then also analyzing top tier players in matchmaking. I try my best when I make these guides to give you guys the best tips for matchmaking specifically, because honestly, when you compare pro play to matchmaking, they're two completely different beasts. For example, rotating quickly in organized matches probably wouldn't be the greatest decision. However, when the goal in your games is to take control of them and in many ways carry, you kind of have to be where the action is. And if you play too passively, you're just going to run into a problem of not being able to have as much of an impact on the game as you should. Anyway though, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe down below, and don't forget to answer our question of the day, which was, do you prefer to attack or defend first in Valorant? Really interested to hear what you all have to say. As always, I'm the King Live, and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.